Kia ora everybody, welcome to Word on Monday for today's reflection and hopefully application of some thoughts around Romans chapter 12. Ngā mihi atu kia koutou e mātakitake ana ki te kōrero nei o te reo o te mane. Tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou I tēnei wā. Hāko ko wai, hāko no hea, ngā mihi. It's great to have you with us this morning or this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you're around the world you're watching. And I pray that the peace of the Lord will be with you. As I'm doing this Word on Monday, there's a couple of things that have happened recently that I just want to bring to our attention. To remind us firstly to pray, to remind us also to remember that those who seek the Lord and His kingdom, He will be found. Firstly, we just had a weekend, quite a busy weekend here up in Kaikohe. We had the youth stay over on Friday night, and we also had some whānau come up, Uncle Tommy and Carla and the whānau and Margaret, Auntie Margaret, via Margaret and Tommy came up, whom were the recipients of their father's war medals from the 28th Māori Battalion. I had the honour and privilege of supporting the family. On Saturday we went out to Waitangi here in north of New Zealand, in the Northland, and there was a ceremony there where probably about 150 family members received their tupuna, or their ancestors, their uncles, aunts, grandfathers' medals that they didn't receive after World War II. That was on the 28th of October. The second thing about the 28th of October, which is an important fixture to the historical journey within Aotearoa, New Zealand, is back in 1835, the Confederation of Chiefs gathered at Tauranga, which is a site just below Waitangi grounds in the modern context, and it's across from Te Marae in Pai here. This was a significant document from the perspective, up until that time, Māori, or I actually should say iwi across Aotearoa, New Zealand, had been pretty isolated except for excursions where different rangatira would go off and visit places. So, for example, one of my tupuna went over to Africa, and in his travels over there came back, and hence why we now have Runanga mai wahine around Whare, taking the concepts that he saw in Africa. But 1835 was a significant time in the New Zealand space, or on Aotearoa, with the iwi, and particularly the Confederated Chiefs, in that being the document that was written of independence, Te Whakaputanga. And this was acknowledged by King George. And if you know how states and authority of states work, particularly when it comes to trade and freement of maritime law and vessel sailing, you have to have a haki, a flag. And there's a relationship to that flag, to the people that it sails the flag, but also to other nations. And so for the first time in the history of the Confederated Chiefs, and as a kind of a corporate, a whānau of group, King George acknowledged Māori as an independent nation, or iwi as an independent nation. Māori really wasn't used at the time. At this particular time, it was really iwi. So iwi and hapu across the country were recognised as an independent state by King George, which meant that any trade offerings that iwi had established, whether it's over to Sydney or other parts of the world, there was freedom of travel for them now because their haki or their flag was recognised by another sovereign state. And so Te Whakaputanga is really that first kind of global recognition of iwi in our scene. And this document here in 1835, Te Whakaputanga, really sets the backdrop to Te Reti o Waitangi, which would be signed 5 years later. So that was another significant event in our time. And for those of us that have got the memory, one of the events that happened back in the 90s by a gentleman called Mike Smith, he attempted to chop down the pine tree that was sitting on which we call now One Tree Hill or Maungakeke. And as a political protest, it was interesting that the reaction that at the time, and quoting his words, but not verbatim, but in the sense of the spirit of his words, that the expression of people annoyance and disgust about him chopping down a tree when the monument that was standing right beside the tree, they were more concerned about the tree than the intent and the understanding of what the monument was about. Because the monument, if you go up there, at the time and scene that it was put up, was like a memorial to the native peoples of New Zealand. And the idea was thinking that they were going to pass away into the books of history type of thing. So yeah, and he used the 28th of October as a date of that, in a sense of doing some prophetic things and also questioning our bicultural treaty journey at the time. So those were two big events that were going on up here and around the place over the weekend. And then on Sunday we had service together, and it was a joy to spend time with church family and the whānau again. You recall last week I spoke on Romans 12. I'm just trying to find my prop. Romans 12. And I talked about the rubber band space. And this week we shared about emotional bank accounts. And I had on the stage books and bags and different types of bags that represent the things that we carry, and either good deposits or negative deposits into our lives. And it's really the bookends of the korero about here in Romans 12, where Paul is encouraging the church and the believers, the followers of Jesus, about this idea of acts of worship connected to the process of being renewed, the renewing of our mind and the transformation that comes with it. He seems to tie these two ideas together of worship and the transformation of our minds, worship and the renewing of our minds. There's an intentionality between what Paul is saying here, in the light of all the mercies that we see unfold in Romans chapter 1 through to chapter 11. He's basically putting forward the idea that it's actually none of our own, it's not our own effort or our own work. It's all by the mercies of God that we're able to walk and be in fellowship with God again through what Christ Jesus had done. That is, that he died, he rose, and is now seated at the right hand of the Father. That he had an earthly ministry here on earth. He lived a life sinless, free of sin, and was willing to die as a substitute for us. And now we get to this Romans 12 part, and it's in light of that mercy, it's in light of that grace, it's in light of that thing that we do not deserve, that we're to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice. You know, some religions and some things that are going on in our modern world today is that they try to deny the flesh. They try to deny, to be truly spiritual, you have to give away this earthly thing, this fleshly thing, which is kind of a Gnostic teachings which were rebuked in the early churches. And in so doing, this desire to find this inner spark or inner light. But here Paul is actually saying that our whole being is involved in the process of worshipping God and giving praise to him. It's not just our spiritual being, it's our whole being. It's our thought processes. It's the ability to capture what we think and capture it and bring it into submission to the law and the will of the Lord. And so the second part to my conversation around this passage it firstly started with the rubber band and how stress and tension, these things that can come to us, these patterns of this world, we can start following them, and if we don't do anything about them, there's twisting and happens, and what we're going on in here, there's actually energy build up inside the rubber band. And the patterns of this world is, in most cases, is people can become violent, and so the energy then it gets released through physical force or action. So when I let go one end, the energy is just released, and so you can see the rubber band retorting back. The problem being with the rubber band, if you keep going, and people experience this, eventually the rubber band breaks. And so then you can get into mental health issues, you can get into violent issues, you can get into verbal explosions, you can get into issues where we might find ourselves doing self-medication, and some people go to the extreme of things, they're so stressed out, they go, I'm going to go do PT or run or do some sort of physical, and so they go to the extreme of that, or they self-medicate on alcohol or drugs. The most prominent one is actually alcohol. It's most a detrimental self-medication tool that we have in our society. It wrecks homes and families and so forth. But alcohol is a mechanism that, and then other drugs that might come in. And so the process of understanding, the idea for me was with this rubber band was actually to capture the thought. So when we're feeling the twisting happening, we capture that thought. The second part to that is our emotional bank accounts. Depending on how resilient we are in relationship to dealing with the things that happen around us and the challenges we face in the workplace environment, the training environment, the schools, the bullyingness, the online bullyingness, the sexual perversion of what's going on in our society, the woke culture, depending on how resilient we are is the state of our emotional bank account. And the emotional bank account is like a physical bank account. If you've got a job or you're on the benefit at a certain point in the schedule of a calendar week, money is deposited into your bank account. And hopefully the bank account is not in the deficit. A number of years ago when Josie and I first got married, we lived from paycheck to paycheck. And sometimes we rolled up to the ATM machine in Manukau and put our card in, just thinking hopefully we'll put $10 in and see if we can get some money out. And so we were living by faith. I was studying, and then when we went to do Te Whare and pastoring, they weren't paid positions, and so it was all by faith and how we. And so we would be, if we did that for 10 years, and sometimes we'd go, oh, got $10 out. But the problem was there was actually an overdraft limit on that account. And so even though I was getting some cash to satisfy what we might do as a young family at the time, it was in deficit. I was pulling out money that I actually didn't have. And so taking that imagery of a bank account, whether you've got in the black or in the red, that also happens to us spiritually. There are good fruits and bad fruits. And later on in Paul, in the book of Galatians, he gives a really good descriptors of what the good fruits are and the bad fruits are. And the encouragement is that if you're living by the Holy Spirit, you're pursuing the good fruits. And you're finding the good fruits and placing those in our lives. Emotional bank accounts happen all the time. The challenge between the rubber band and the emotional bank account comes when you're in the deficit, that you've got no reserves. You're in the red. And that red could be for a number of reasons. Just like Joseph and I, we withdrew the cash out. And even though we had $10 to go and buy some food that night or that week, it was still in the red. we still had to find out more money to put in there to get into the black, so we weren't pulling out out of our reserves. We were being exhausted. But God is faithful. He is faithful to you and I in our relationships and what he does with us. And he'll put people around you. He'll put situations around you where you get work opportunities, or someone gifts you a koha, and that's happened to us a number of times, that we find money in our mailbox, or someone drops off a card and there's some mail in there, or some food on the doorstep, and so we're doing that now for others in the community that we find ourselves. So whether it's the rubber band or your emotional bank account, we're called to offer ourselves as a living sacrifice, an act of worship, by renewing our minds and being transformed. And so I asked our church community to write down some ideas. So what are the fruits? What are the things that produce fruit in us? And that are helpful. And there was prayer, there was the attending church, there was reading the word, there was fellowship, there was helping each other, and there's a lot more that people could have written down. And I've already alluded to the Galatians story book where Paul talks about the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, hope, peace, and all these 9 of them, 9 fruits that Paul exhorts the church to pursue. These 2 bookends of activities, the way we deal with stress, the rubber band experience, and what we put into our lives, the emotional bank account, contribute to whether or not we're following the patterns of this world. If we keep twisting or allow others to twist, we're following the patterns of this world. If we keep withdrawing out of negativity and it becomes a negative withdrawal, we're following the patterns of this world. And quite often, and I'm going to be talking this next time that I pick up this theme, is quite often the withdrawals are done by people because they know the PIN code to our ATM machine. In other words, they know which buttons to push, and you react emotionally. And often it's out of deficit. And it's in this place that if we pursue the Lord, we seek after him, we find good fellowship, we find people that are well and healthy and grow together. It's in these relationships that you start building positive deposits. And it can start with us. Read the word, pray. You can go for a walk and do some exercise. Someone said yesterday about fitness. We do things that help let the blood flow in us, to let the muscles grow and build resilience and strength. And may that be so for us today and this week. May you bring people around you. May the Lord give you strength by drawing people around you, whether it's your combat buddy, or your life group, your home group, your small group, or a cup of tea with someone, where you're able to put deposits into you emotionally and mentally that are fruitful. And if you find yourself stressed out and as the tension's on, go and pray with someone. Sing some songs, worship. Get in the garden. Whatever it might be to help develop a disciplined life that builds resilience. It's an act of worship that we offer all ourselves, not just the stuff that we do on Sunday. Nō reira whānau, he mihi tēnei kia koutou e mātai ki te gana. It's great to have you with us, and I pray that this week will be a blessing to you. Whether you're stuck in the rubber band or you're in the emotional bank account, it's going up and down all the time. I pray that the Lord will give you ways and solutions to bring out a space where you can offer praise and glory to him as your spiritual act of worship. Anyway, God bless. Have a great week. We'll see you in Auckland if you're down at the Hui. But otherwise, God bless and have a great week. Hei kona.